Come on, 2, 3.
Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN Weekly for Saturday, April 30th, 2022. It's been another great week of shows with great topics and great guests. We kicked off the week with a look at how do you define or redefine retirement. Let's take a look.
The old definition of retirement used to be a short period of not working at the end of your life. And my grandparents, for example, retired that way. They lived for about 10 years. And that's just the way everybody defined retirement. And often we have that expectation in our heads. But now with people living 20 or 30 years in retirement, first of all, it's not just a short period at the end of your life, but also doubling or tripling the period of retirement really puts a strain on the finances. And so the definition of retirement has definitely evolved. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine said, next year I'm going to retire and then work 3 days a week. And I thought, okay, that's your definition of retirement. So I think everybody needs to define retirement in the way that suits them. I think people still have their grandparents' idea of retirement or even their parents' idea, and just not realizing the implications of living a long time in retirement. If you retire in your early 60s and you're married, one of you might live another 30 years. And that's a long time. And so what are you going to do with your life? Where are you going to live? Do you have enough money all that time? And I think the vast majority of Americans just have not let that implication sink in. And they retire for a variety of reasons. I mean, one, retirees love being retired. So, if you're an older worker, you want some of that. You don't want to have to wake up to the alarm clock. You don't want the stress at work. It's perfectly rational that people want to retire from their current work. But I like to say, really, ideally, you would retire to a life that you've envisioned and imagined, rather than retiring from some aspects of work that you don't like. And that's kind of a key piece of advice, is that if you have another 20 or 30 years in your life, you've got to imagine what that will be and then plan for that. And I could elaborate more, but that's kind of the short answer there. For 30 years, I was a consulting actuary working on traditional pension plans. And I was really on the front lines of that shift. And I realized that this is placing a lot of responsibility on workers to save and invest, but also manage that money in retirement. So here's the big headwind, is that I've seen the studies, and there are a number of studies that reinforce what I'm about ready to say. The vast majority of people in their late 50s and 60s have not saved enough money to retire full-time at age 65 under their current level of spending. Let me repeat that, because this is profound. The vast majority of older workers today don't have enough money saved so that they can retire at 65, never work again, and have their pre-retirement standard of living. And so the tough choices they face are either work beyond age 65 or reduce their spending, or some combination. These are hard choices for people to wrap their heads around, and they need help. And so that is one of the biggest headwinds facing people today, is just not really understanding the financial implications of a long time in retirement. There are good lessons. And when I say retirees might not need to work longer, you've got to acknowledge that's easier said than done, because a lot of individuals have resistance towards working longer. They may not want to, they may not be able to physically, employers may not want to hire them. So that's definitely a tough thing for some people. Having said that, the vast majority of young, early retirees, in other words, retirees who have just retired and they're in about 5 or 10 years into retirement, those are the folks who conceivably could work for a while. And almost all people want some kind of flexibility, reduced hours. And this is what the pandemic has taught employers, is that it is possible to have flexible hours, to have remote work. And so I think the pandemic has taught both employers and individuals it is possible. And that is indeed a blessing for for people, pre-retirees and retirees who could conceivably work remotely.
And we also discussed managing data sharing in workplace benefit plans. Let's take a look.
Let me give you a little bit of background here, Jeff. We had done a survey last year of advisors, and it was a pretty comprehensive survey. And among all the data that we got, one of the questions that we asked was to rank the products and services that advisors typically got from their record keepers. And there was a lot of familiar things at the top of the list. One of the things that was lower on the list was financial wellness. And we happened to, at our November Spark meeting, bring these results up. And on stage, we had some senior executives from the advisor community. And they were quite shocked by the results. And the record keepers were also shocked by the results, because both groups had spent a lot of time and effort to promote financial wellness. Fortunately, we had a number of advisors in the audience, and they were good enough to chime in and say, let us give you the reality. The reality is, we understand the importance of financial wellness and providing financial wellness to our participants. The unfortunate truth is that as someone serving their needs, we cannot get the data that we need to provide that help to participants. So my members took that back and realized that something had to be done. And so on April 1st, we put on an industry workshop to discuss the issues involved in how to make data sharing easier and more efficient for everyone involved. And we were fortunate enough to have Jamie McGinnis help us with that and set the day up and walk us through all of the issues that the industry faces.
That's true. I would say that if you take a look across the industry, various players in the industry have different perspectives around if they can share, or who can give the permission to share the data. And there are different business models out there in terms of, whether or not it's advantageous to share the data as well. And there's a back and forth between, say, the providers and the advisors on that particular topic. But if you take it back, there are problems that need to be solved from sort of a definition from a legality point of view, determining who has the ability to give the permission for the data to be used. So people talk about it in terms of who owns the data, whether or not it's a plan asset, and so forth, which is not obviously deemed to be so today. But that difference of opinion is impacting the discussion between advisors and providers in terms of whether or not that data can be provided to them. There is also additionally a problem because there are costs associated with addressing this from a technical perspective. This is not something that is free. So even if there's a willingness to share that data, the ability to share it in a safe and a secure way costs money. And so that stands in the way of getting things done as well. And then there's an experience element around this, which is challenging as well, because if you are seeking permission in a timely fashion, is that data, if you send it versus access it, how dated does it become? How does that impact the experience? So there are a lot of problems that still need to be solved across the industry to make this work the way that it needs to on behalf of the American worker. Look, the recognition that financial wellness as a theme has been out there for a number of years at this point in time. Originally, it was a lot of the providers were focused on it because they recognized that there were impediments out there that were stopping people from contributing to the plan the way they need to in order to develop sort of the retirement readiness that they need. But in terms of trying to find solutions for that, whether it's debt management or other sorts of programs that they want to put in place, those are highly data dependent. And as a result of trying to solve for this, they've turned up this challenge around sharing data and having data be available to solve these problems is critical. And the data, while 401k record keeper providers or DC record keeping providers have a significant amount of the data, They're also seeking to integrate other data relative to the financial well-being, other accounts, other sources of income in order to help with that. So gathering the data is becoming a challenge, and technically is a challenge. Keeping it fresh and making sure that the recommendations are meaningful at the moment in time is becoming a challenge. And it takes money to actually make that work properly. So there's a lot out there in terms of helping participants, not just helping them to become ready for retirement in that accumulation phase. And I would say, only to close on this, is to say that with decumulation now becoming more of the focus in the marketplace, data around spending needs is becoming much more important as well, and helping people understand how to spend down the accounts also. So it's becoming more magnified today, and yet even more important for us to solve these problems.
One of the things that we did in our workshop, it was not exclusively for record keepers. In fact, we went to great lengths to invite in the entire ecosystem. We had payroll providers, we had record keepers, we had HSA providers, we had student loan refinancers, asset managers, consultants, like the position you used to have, advisors were there. So we wanted to have the broad ecosystem represented. And you're absolutely right that once many of our members rightfully are very concerned that if they share data, that once data is given to anyone, you lose control of it. And from a legal perspective, it could go anywhere and could be used in any fashion. And so a lot of members have been rightfully very reluctant to share any data at all for those potential liabilities.
Well, we're halfway through a look at our best segments for the week. We come back, the other half. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. This week we discussed whether ESG and sustainable investing is waning for retail investors. Let's take a look.
it's going to take time for it to really embed itself into the mindset. But I think one of the ways to look at this is to compare it, say, to something like recycling. Okay, I mean, I don't know exactly what the recycling arrangements are around where you are, but where I am now, they come by every week and they collect your recycling, and you sort it a little bit yourself, and off they go and you do that. So it's really, really easy to recycle stuff. And since they've been doing that, the amount of recycling that goes up way more than it used to be in the old days. You had to put it all in your car, traipse off down to wherever it was that the recycling centre was, and you had to take care of it yourself. So in other words, they made it easier so people do it more. And I think with ESG investing, what you're likely to see is the same dynamic go through, that as firms find ways to make this something that's more accessible to investors, that demand's going to increase. So you kind of get this self-reinforcing loop that as it becomes easier, more people want it. As more people want it, firms have an incentive to make it easier. So one of the things, for example, and I think what that survey did bring out that's very important, is the extent to which fee differentials is going to be a barrier to this. I mean, if I considering different products and there might be one that I like on balance because of its green features relative to another one, but you're trying to charge me a 30, 40, 50% fee premium for that product over the other product, well, I'm much less likely to go for that. It's all these trade-offs that people have in their mind. So I do think it's going to be a gradual process, but I also think that we're seeing a shift in general attitudes, we're seeing a shift in the market, and it is something that's gradually going to become more easily accessible over time. It seems to be, I mean, but as with a lot of things, it could play out both ways. You see the argument that, as things start to clarify where we're going with Russia, and obviously what that means for the global oil supply, and where Ukraine ends up and what that means for global food supply, is that turns a spotlight onto the importance of these commodities and the importance of energy independence and so on. So it may be that there are fallouts from some of these short-term effects which reinforce the need to change investing to be more sustainable. Although, as you say, it can also be very disruptive to it, because inevitably, if we're finding ourselves pinched and inflation becomes an issue, that is going to affect the way that we make our decisions around sustainability. It shouldn't be something that's an optional extra, but it can become less of a priority if you've got something that's right in your face. So I think, yeah, you're exactly right. It's a complicated picture. A lot of things do take a generation for attitudes to really change. I mean, so if you've grown up in an area where there's big conflict between two groups, be it different races or different religions or whatever around the world it is, if you grow up within that conflict, it's going to shape how you see the world for the rest of your life. But that next generation, that's not firsthand for them. That it's not as embedded in. So I think all of our experiences do stay with us for our lives, and that makes something of a difference. But I wouldn't want to overstate the extent to which ESG is a generational thing. Most of the people I know of my age are concerned about the climate. I mean, this is not something that it's only the kids care about. It's something that is universal among the people that I deal with. But there's clearly, within America in particular, there's a big difference between rural attitudes and urban attitudes and suburban attitudes. I mean, we know that in so many ways, and that's not just how you want to invest in your attitudes towards the environment. It's a really fundamental shift. They're different groups of people, and so I think, yes, it's any statement that we make, it's very hard to apply it across all generations, across all the racial groups, across all of the political groups, and then, but even within a particular group, no one necessarily fits the exact stereotype of, the white 55-year-old male sitting in, Massachusetts may not be exactly the views that you assume they have. So there's differences at every level.
And finally, we discuss getting them young and teaching them about financial literacy. Let's take a look.
We try to put forth effort to do outreach throughout the 4th District, which we cover, which is all of Ohio, some of Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia as well. We try to narrow in on grades K through 12, but we also reach the university population as well, giving them tools to navigate not only their financial literacy, but also college and career readiness, and learning how to make strong financial decisions so that they can be real strong consumers in our economy. And not only that, learning how to apply it to your daily life. That's one of the things we try to truly implement into our lesson plans, implementing how they can relate these tools to their daily lives, their parents' daily lives, and some of the concepts we introduce, such as budgeting and saving, how they can incorporate it into not only their futures, but as soon as they walk out of the door or walk out of the classroom, they can start to implement something they learned from our session into their practical life. I think that's the essential thing that you really need to learn when you're learning financial literacy content. We try to create our content on a continuum basis so that students start at a younger age and consistently grow with us, learning tools that are continually developed in their lives. So while they learn basics of just learning what money is at an early age, by the time they're done learning some of the concepts we introduced to them, they'll learn about monetary policy, for instance, and how the economy is impacted, or our role as the Federal Reserve in the economy, are just some of the things we introduce to them later on in their educational careers. So there are ways we can introduce these things that make them not only educated consumers, but more impactful, educated individuals, so they can share this knowledge with not only their families, but other individuals in their communities as well. Well, they would go to the tab of the Learning Center and Money Museum. They would find programs and materials where they can implement these materials, where there are live sessions, programs, and also educational materials and lesson plans that you can implement not only into your classrooms, but parents can implement them into their daily lives. We have some sheets or worksheets that you can use during the summer months where you can teach your kids just practical learning things such as budgeting, savings goals, and activities that are not only educational, but they're also fun for the family to do. You could also go to federalreserveeducation.org, where you'll find endless resources from all Federal Reserves throughout the system that upload content on various topics relative to financial literacy and just finance in general. I would also encourage you, if you're not in our district, to go to that website and see where you can reach a financial a Federal Reserve education educator in your district, connect with them, and build a relationship with them. They have countless resources, and they do outreach as well, such as similar to what our team does. And you can get more resources from there, as well as build a rapport.
Well, certainly great segments. I want to thank all of our wonderful contributors this week. And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. Have a topic of interest, somebody you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news in lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more in all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to see our latest content? Search our archives? Well, visit our website. That's www.broadcastretirementnetwork.com. And our streaming partners like Amazon, Roku, Samsung. There's over 100 to choose from. We're back again tomorrow for BRN Sunday. I'll be joined by members of the media, academia, and financial services as we analyze all the news and events for the week. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
But if you're tired,
Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.